How's it, guys? This is the last of the modules on the accreditation program, and we're just going to have a quick look through corrosion protection. And you will then, if you have not yet received your project, your special project, whether it's for residential or for commercial or for fire, and you'll be handing that in, and we'll be evaluating that. So the last of the modules, you've gone through the introduction, the benefits of steel. You've had a look at the DocuCenter, fenestration types, norms and furniture, safety systems, and then the various types of insulated and non-insulated building systems. You've done training with Luke and on Yanisoft, and then you've gone with Andreas into the factory to do fabrication, finishing and glazing, and 4.2 is what we're looking at today, surface protection and logistics. And the last module is the project we mentioned at the beginning for accreditation. So for those of you that have not yet done surface protection and logistics, welcome to the last of the accreditation modules. Okay, so what we're going to go through is just the introduction and then specifying coating systems. Then we're going to look at surface preparation and pre-treatment, coating and guarantees, and then of course the logistics of protection of finished goods as the contractor doesn't take responsibility for that. Now, we all want to do this kind of work, whether it's residential or whether it's commercial work. And in order to do that, we need to have a good understanding of corrosion protection. The question is why? And if you've just read that on my slide, the estimated cost of corrosion globally is 2.5 trillion US dollars. That is a very significant number. So we need to understand what we're doing when it comes to corrosion protection of steel, especially you that are going to become Janssen ambassadors here in South Africa. Okay, so firstly, the Janssen coating guideline document, which looks like that, and it is available from DocuCenter, has everything that you need to know, apart from the final decisions on what area you're working in, what corrosivity category that area is rated as, and obviously the guarantees that you and your applicator, your protection applicator are agreeing on in terms of what is the best solution for the project. So that's the guideline document, and you can find everything in there from the terminology, the specification of coating systems, and how to prepare the surface, pre-treatment, coating, quality control, and also a list of standards and normative references, which are typically European. Now, as ambassador of Janssen Systems, corrosion is critical in terms of protection, and corrosion can damage the Janssen reputation. As we roll out in South Africa, it would be a real issue if we found corrosion on the new projects. And if we find an offender, a fabricator who continues to complete projects that are subject to corrosion, then that repeated offense might mean we remove your certification. Now, the first thing is we need clarity on what protection system you will recommend and you will guarantee. This is your decision, it's not ours. We're going to give some guidelines in this module. And this is a very recent map, which is taken from Janssen van Rensburg in 2010. It's been recently revised in a paper which was written in 2019. It goes through the corrosivity across South Africa. Now you'll see on the far right of the table here, you've got types of corrosion, mild steel corrosion, rates, micrometers per year, and then galvanized steel sheet life in years. And if you go down to the bottom, you'll see the intertidal to 5 kilometer inland, severe marine corrosion, the type of corrosion. And you'll see the corrosion factor is from 100 to 300 microns per year, which is a hang of a lot. And there you can take your time to look through that in the recording. Here's an example of an actual site that was recorded in the study. And you'll see Melkbos Strand down here in the Western Cape recorded a nearly 0.5 millimeter of corrosion on the West Coast in 1 year. In De Aar, on the other hand, recorded only 2 microns per annum. And here we see Melkbos Strand nearly 0.5 millimeter, 460 microns per year. Now, the corrosivity categories are C1 to CX. You're probably familiar with them. C1 is a very low category for offices, schools, and museums, and that can be deserts and so on. And then those that are closer to the coast, C5, which are very high corrosivity environments, and they can be mines for industrial purposes, unventilated sheds, and subtropical and tropical zones. And if you look here on the right, you'll see industrial areas, coastal areas in general, and shelter positions on coastlines. So you need to speak to the engineer on your project or take a view with your applicator as to what category your project is in. Now, just a couple of notes on this. Based on assimilated historical, published and unpublished, and new atmospheric corrosion data for South Africa, the atmosphere within the first 150 meters from the ocean is classified as extreme, CX, corrosive. So that gives you some clarity on that. And then between 150 and the 1 kilometer mark, the environment is rated mid C4, which is high, to mid C5, very high, corrosive, from 1 kilometer to 32 kilometers, moderate, which is a C3 to high C4 corrosive. And then for most inland locations, a low C2 to potentially high C4 corrosive. So again, it's important for you and your fabricator to know what category your project is located in. The highest atmospheric corrosivity is typically measured in the Western Cape within 150 meters from the ocean, and the lowest in the Karoo and the Kalahari Desert. And lastly, the variability in the corrosion rate of mild steel was found to decrease by as much as 80% between 150 and 1,000 meters from the coastline. So that is very significant that a kilometer in from the coastline, there's a reduction of as much as 80% in terms of corrosivity. All right, let's look at number 3, surface preparation and pre-treatment. Just something of value, cutting with a cold cut blade, a TCT blade for small cutoff and CNC centers makes a big difference to the quality of your work because it allows your cuts to be neat, very few sparks and very few burrs, and improves the butt jointing of your joints. So the good equipment across the sorry, that should be a CTC blade, a carbon tipped blade. Sorry for that. So good equipment like CTC saws, tables, clamps, and welding kit make a significant difference in the ultimate quality of your work and hence the surface of your product. Ideally, the welding machine should be either MIG or TIG, as arc welders are fine. Either the transformer or the inverters, they do certainly work, but they just take more effort to clean off. And then obviously grinding with the correct sanding disc grades. And in your training, you've seen that Janssen suggests the 3M sanding discs, which work well, and to get a finished surface, the eccentric grinders or centric sanders. A key thing before coating your product is to do a visual inspection to check open gasket raceways and bead recesses to make sure you don't have any weld spatter closing those gasket raceways. And then you need to check that the door and the sash assembly are working before you go for coating and pre-treatment, or at least pre-treatment and coating. So let's look at that preparation and pre-treatment. Now we spoke about the carbon tip blade for cold cutting. You can see there it's not a carborundum blade, and they are certainly more effective and they last longer. The tables, to get flat work and ensure that your surface of your joints are flush, you need decent trestles, and those trestles can be simple trestles on trolleys or more complex ones like the Janssen, that you can invert the workpiece and be able to do welding without unclamping any of the work. And there at the bottom, you see an example of just making sure that you got flushness across your mitered joints. Here's just a CNC center, and obviously if you have a CNC machine center, it makes it a lot easier to do work and reduces the likelihood of errors, of operator errors. Okay, the pre-treatment, it can be mechanical or chemical. So those of you that have your own powder coating plant, some of you may only have chemical treatment tanks, and some of you may have mechanical for things like sand or shot blasting. The pre-treatment is divided into 3 basic categories. First, the cleaning side of it, the degreasing with mildly alkalines, acids, or solvents. And then the changing of the topography, which is blasting, sweep blast, cleaning, or etching. You'll notice that you cannot sand blast this material as it changes the material surface too much. So sweep blast cleaning is more like a very fine grit, and I can't give you that grit offhand. Okay, the conversion layer is the third part of pre-treatment, and that's the passivation layer prior to treating. Now, the selection of your pre-treatment type is the joint decision, again, of yourself as the metal worker and your coating applicator, who will eventually provide the guarantee. And as a note, we said before, no shot blasting, only sweep blast cleaning with a very fine grit. Then the coating options and guarantees. The question you've been asking, what are we going to use? Now, for the protection of outdoor elements, will obviously depend again on the corrosion category that we mentioned. But one of the options, the first option would be powder coating with both a zinc-rich primer and a UV-stable top coat. And I think that's probably the simplest of the coating systems and possibly the most reliable in terms of your outcomes. If your powder coaters may not often use the zinc-rich primer, they might be using strontium primers, and in some environments that's fine. And the zinc-rich primer typically is a little bit more expensive than the strontium, but it gives you, certainly at the coast, will give you the guarantees that you need. The accredited paint systems from either Sigma or Jotun or others, and these accredited paint systems are typically two-part zinc-rich epoxy primers, and then they are UV-stable polyurethane two-part top coats. So you can use paint systems, and the paint systems at least give you a reasonable architectural finish if done with a spray application. And you can, I've spoken to the guys who we'll speak to in a second who've done a lot of work with these paint systems. The third option is zinc plating and then UV stable powder coated finish. And also with the zinc plating, something to note is that the zinc plating should not be passivated prior to the powder coating finish, I am told. Again, you'll need to check that with your applicator. And then the fourth and last one is a thermal zinc spray and then a UV stable powder coated finish or similar. Now, the thermal zinc spray gives you a nice, kind of a coarse-ish, not too coarse, like a suede kind of finish, and a very good surface for applying the powder. Okay, just some notes. First, identify the correct category for the location and whether they'll be used for indoors or outdoors. And obviously, indoors, you don't need such significant systems, protection systems. And then another important note is just that hot dip galvanizing is not advised due to the warping, as you're all familiar with, or it will block the gasket raceways. You know that most steel products in this country, you have to have self-adhesive gaskets, or you'd make some plan with the gaskets. But the Janssen systems have a gasket raceway that you press or roll the gasket into, and they can get blocked up with welding spatter, or in this case, they could get blocked up with hot dip galvanizing. Obviously, also the hot dip galvanizing costs a lot of money to clean up, and there's a risk of compromising the integrity of the coating when grinding it down. Just somebody, I spoke to a chemical engineer from Technical Coating Solutions, and he actually issued a guarantee on a job in Saldanha on the west coast of South Africa. And he noted that he was able to achieve a 20-year guarantee using Sigma coatings, obviously with some of the caveats that come in the maintenance regimes with those guarantees, but still that is very significant at the coast, achieving 20-year guarantees with the right industrial applications of paint systems. Now, Janssen would expect their products to get a guarantee for 10 years, and those guarantees will include voiding terms if the client does not clean the elements on a minimum prescribed period, or if damage and scratches create a corrosion initiation point. Okay, I hope that makes some sense to you. And then just the last item is that your goods are your responsibility throughout the whole construction process, and typically contractors don't take, according to the normal JBCC document, they don't take ownership of that until the practical completion as defined in the JBCC contract. So those items remain your responsibility, and the key to a successful product and for you to be a good Janssen ambassador is to ensure by the time they get to site or where they fabricate in the factory that they are covered properly with some protective coatings like what you've got in the picture here to ensure that they're safe. And then once they're installed on site, to again tape them up until such a time as the wet works and the finishing has started, or at least the main works are finished. So what we expect, number item 1 there, is excellence in terms of quality is only achieved when the client signs off the project at handover. Now, damage to goods can be caused in a factory due to incorrect storage and handling. And when you take time to think about these things, you can mitigate those risks. Item 2B, In transit to and back from the coating plant, when outsourced, now that's another key factor, is often when it leaves the powder coating plant, if you haven't agreed some protection with the powder coater, they're going to be put on the back of a van and taken back to your premises potentially, and they will get scratched and damaged before they even get to site. And before Mrs. Jones, who's spending good money on this kit, sees some scratches and so on. And then in transit to the construction site and on site storage, you also know that your team's not ready sometimes on site. You deliver it to site, there's not a proper container, or maybe you don't have a container on that specific site, and there's damage that occurs there by maybe other guys moving the material or incorrect storage. And then obviously, as we said earlier, during or after installation, while the works are being commissioned towards practical and works and final completion. Good processes and protection are certainly vital to ensure good quality. So guys, that is the last of the programs for the accreditation, and we trust that this will become not the end, but the beginning of your Janssen journey, and we look forward to partnering with you as long-term fabrication partners across the country. All right, thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to getting you certified. Take care.